Awesome. So, Jocelyn, if you want to start by introducing yourself and letting us know like what you do, what have you done, like what's your background, and maybe like what have you been doing out of this current situation to make the most out of your time and all that. So, if you want to get started with just a quick intro and kind of telling us what you've been doing these past couple of weeks.
Okay, I certainly can do that. So my name is Jocelyn Van Coney, and I am the founder and owner of Van Coney Business Strategies LLC. Um, I've the company has officially this month been in business for 19 years. So um, I I have run the company full time. I've run the company a side hustle. I've run the company probably through the stages that we would kind of call hobby, um, both through strong economic periods and periods that are uh, little not strong economically, kind of like what we're experiencing right now, although we can get into that. But I have a different take on this period, I think. Uh, Basically, what I do is I work with small business founders and I guide and shepherd them on how to stabilize and increase the revenue. And I do that through utilizing my background in economic development and how to utilize other sources such as government sources and like that to help bring in revenue into your company. And I work with both nonprofit and for-profit founders, but we mainly concentrate now on for-profit folks. So is that a good intro, Daniela?
That's awesome.
All right.
So, you mentioned. I guess we'll start with how you transitioned because I know you worked with nonprofit for in the nonprofit side for a long time. So maybe talk a little bit about that. What was your experience, and maybe what made you transition your business into the for-profit, and if you think that's better or worse, like what has been your experience working with both?
So I did, as you said, I did work with the nonprofit for a long time, but my whole background, I spent about, on the professional side, I spent 25 years working as an economic developer at various levels within the government. And I mainly worked with, during that period of time, I mainly worked with small businesses in a lot of the rural areas or inner city areas, housing developers, that those folks. And uh, so really, but my business itself here had taken on a focus more on the nonprofit business side. Over the years, it just worked that way because I've got more than 25 years of experience working with nonprofits as well. And I've held probably every position you can hold in a nonprofit organization on both the board of directors the uh, or as a staff person, both from an executive director level, head of development and fundraising, and program manager level. So I have an extensive knowledge of nonprofits, and the business had really taken on really working with nonprofit small business founders. And while we still very much enjoy doing that, for me personally, and in full disclosure, and that has been one of the outcomes of this period that we're going through for the last month or so, I had been moving the company more and more into the training and coaching and mentoring space, where we're training people and coaching and mentoring them how to fish, not being the fisherman, so not being the generalized consulting firm that we had been. And when all of this stuff started here with COVID-19, I realized as I was having to transition, like many people who are going through this at the same time with their companies and with their teams, and whether you're a solopreneur or you have, you know, W-2 employees. I do have a couple W-2 employees, and I've got some contract folks that work with us. I realized that for me personally, I needed to transition more into where my passion really lies, and that is really with working with small business founders and owners who are for-profit driven. And in all disclosure, quite honestly, that after all of these years with working with the nonprofits, I got to be honest that I was worn out. But we are still doing that as a company because we have nonprofit clients. We manage and administer 3 national nonprofits. We have training for nonprofits, and so as a company, we're doing that. But it's been reorganized into a division of our company, and a lot more of the front going focus here is on small business for-profits and really helping them with their revenue, and in particular the specialty areas that I have developed and some of my team have developed around seeking out government proposals and contracts for the for-profit side, and the leadership coaching and mentoring and like that. So this time for me has been really a big reflective time on what you need to do as a business. And so instead of panicking, I've actually slowed down as the leader of this company and sat back and thought, what is the best way for us to go for the future? And it's not about, for me, the transition is not about getting rid of what we've been doing, but it's about fully stepping into what we should be doing and how we can fully service our entire community and the folks that come to us, but also from a passion standpoint where I can fully step into and service and provide the things that I'm meant to do and where my company's meant to do. And we have grown globally over the last 2 years as I've started doing that. But now with this, I've recognized that we have to do a new, it's time to really review and reset and retarget and take a look at all of that.
Okay, and I guess because you are a small business, and then you also help businesses, and then you have like the nonprofit side. What are you, like, you nonprofit clients? I'm wondering, what are measures that are you like taking as a business that very punctual that other people can adapt? What are the clients coming up to you, and what are you suggesting for them to do? Is there any insights on that? And then maybe what are you also telling your nonprofit clients what they can do during this time?
Okay. So one of the biggest things that we did almost immediately, I had to come, even here in San Antonio, I was in the category of folks that I came home probably about a week and a half to 2 weeks ahead of just about everybody else in the city from a small business standpoint. Initially, though, it was more about just kind of keeping business going as usual. I was just scheduling more online meetings or calls because I was not able to be out networking, even though we really had not seen the spread across this area, but for my own health. But even for us, I built the business 19 years ago so that for the most part, we operated about 85% of the time online and remotely, meeting with clients using Zoom and Google Hangouts here and Meet and, all the various tools, Skype, everything that was available to us, depending where people were in the country and what tools they had. But the biggest thing that happened was we realized that we were actually not ready for remote working either. And so what that meant was that sitting down and taking a look at what all of our systems were. And how they functioned and what really was working. So the first, especially once pretty much the whole country seemed to go into lockdown over the weekend of March 13th, we started really taking a look at that next week of like what was working. And so what I've advised every business owner and even my nonprofit clients to do is to take a look at what systems are working for them or what had been working and how can they bring that online. Because right now in this environment, that's one of the biggest hurdles and challenges that we need to do. And so I started looking at it and my team started looking at what was working for us. So what we realized was, well, we needed a better dashboard to communicate, for instance. And so we had played a little bit with Slack over time and like that. We go, yeah, that was good. Or we'd played a little bit with Trello. We'd, and different aspects of, because we run the company using Google and G Suite, different aspects of it. But what we realized was we had to get all of that connected together. So we adopted Slack. I've been recommending even to my nonprofit clients that they really look at Slack and connecting it to help them connect in all of their files and their chats and the different conversations, especially if you're a leader, the different conversations, because you can see real fast in there what you need to look at and reply back to the team members that are working on that. But my nonprofit clients that have been coming, the bigger challenge for them has actually been because they typically don't work remotely. They don't have a lot of people who work remotely. I mean, occasionally their grant writer might because they're contracting with them or somebody who's social media, something like that. The bigger challenge has been for them going home, not only from the technological aspects of it, but from the fact that that a lot of times their employees are not engaging. Now we're seeing that with some of our for-profit clients, but we're actually seeing it a little bit more with our nonprofit clients. And they've also been reporting back that sometimes staff is not acting in the norm. In other words, by that, what I mean is that they are not being themselves. And I've had to remind folks that this is not usual and really talk through with my clients what's going on and help them mentor and like that. And one of the biggest takeaways I could take, no matter what type of business you have, is that you have to recognize that right now, mentally, everybody is dealing with fear and panic. And it doesn't matter where our mindsets are at. That is really what's going on. I have actually led 4 natural disaster recovery teams, or I've been on 4 of them and I've led 3 of them. And not just through the actual disaster. So right now, if you want to think about it, we're in the middle of an actual disaster right now. But on the other side, the recovery side of it. And the biggest thing that determines whether people and businesses survive is if you can give, especially as a business leader, if you can give some grace to your folks and actually sit down and talk to them. So what I've really been encouraging my clients to do is look, reach out to every single one of your folks, and really have a discussion with them and find out what's going on with them, especially my nonprofit clients, because they're dealing with, trying to figure out how do we still keep the money coming in. So for instance, with one of our national clients, we're really working on that, because what happened is the entire East Coast fundraising tour got shut down because of this virus when the world closed. And so that was like all the revenue for this year. And so we're working with them and their team on how do we reposition, to not lose the year. But the biggest thing I'm going to say, honestly, in all of this, and it doesn't matter who, this is the best time to reevaluate the company. And I've been encouraging my nonprofit clients to do that, to really go through and do an organizational assessment and really take a look at your programming and take a look at how you're staffing and take a look at what your targets are. And did you create some stuff just to go get funding? Because if you did, this is the best time to start having a plan about how you're going to transition back to your mission. But it's the same thing for us as small business owners. So it's been a real challenge even for me as a small business owner to decide, what do I do or what don't I do? For instance, do I go apply for SBA money or are we okay? And one of the biggest things to know and help you determine that is to know what your numbers are. So everybody, it doesn't matter what your business structure is right now, we have to look at what's our numbers. Is money still coming in that maybe you thought initially was going away, but it's still actually there. Maybe some of it's delayed. What's that interim plan? And Daniela, that's a lot of it. I mean, the nonprofits really, they're still having to operate their programs and everything just like they did. They're having to get innovative with that, like we all are. And a lot of it's about getting innovative and bringing calls and meetings and stuff online, because you can still serve your constituency virtually if that's what you need to do. Now, some, nonprofits, because we do keep track of it even around the world, they have to be on the ground. I've got some clients, for instance, in Uganda who they serve children in orphanages, and those kids have no place to go. They have to be on the ground. So they're having to put contingency plans in place to, deal with if there's an outbreak and like that. So the biggest thing I'm going to say that we've been doing is really looking at our numbers and looking at our targets and looking at our cash flow and knowing which clients they're not actually disappearing, but maybe for things beyond their control, we will eventually get paid, but we're not getting paid right now. And what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for me as the owner of the business and being able to keep everybody employed?
Great. Yeah. And I mean, us as a nonprofit, like a public service program, we have taken some of those measures. And like you said, like sometimes you do something for only fundraising, or you don't even know what you're doing it. So reassessing like where's the real need and creating programming around that need. And that's why we're having these type of sessions and other remote sessions to double down on that. So, and then, I mean, you kind of hinted that you have another perspective on it. Is that like you're a little positive about it, or how do you feel about?
I'm actually, so I'm glad you asked that question. I'm actually positive about it. And I realize that, I'm human like everybody else. So I realized that, yeah, did I go through a week or two And quite honestly, on Saturday, something really hit me that's a little bit more on the personal side on one level, but on another level, it is going to affect how I personally have to operate, and and what it might even mean for the business for the foreseeable future until we get a vaccine or get a handle on this thing. And and I know I'm not alone, and I'm not alone amongst the entrepreneurial world either. And it's like a type of grief, right? I mean, because there are things that a month ago were like that was the norm, but my perspective is we're not going back to that month ago. I think that there's certain aspects that are definitely going to be there when we come out of this, but I personally think that we have done an absolute very fast global shift into welcome to the complete digital age, like an industrial revolution. And but that doesn't scare me. I'm really starting to think in terms of innovation. So let me give you an example. The reason that I'm so positive about it is what I realized was the best thing that the difference between like me and what you guys are doing here at Launch is I realized that my best strategy was not inventing something new. It was, how can I pivot what we have? So some of my trainings, as you know, are live. I do them as live workshops. Well, how can we take those and bring them online? So we've got a plan for that now. But the other thing that I realized was in solving problems for some of my clients. So for instance, we have an organizational assessment that's specific to nonprofit businesses, and they can take that assessment and find out exactly where they might need to improve or what they need to look at business wise, et cetera. Well, that assessment is in a Google Forms doc, which works all fine and dandy. And there's times that we put it out there for free to anybody who wants it. They can take it. The form, collects the data. So we do tell people that. Well, I had some people I needed to get that to. For one reason or another, with all this tech changes and stuff, they just were not able to open it. And it was really some folks that were overseas. And so in trying to solve that issue over the last couple of weeks, finally, about 2 weeks ago, it dawned on me, wait a second. I can solve this issue. And not only can I solve this issue for them, but I can solve this issue for pretty much everybody else if they want this. So I started this thing as 14, I think it's got 14 sections. Each section's got about 6-7 questions. So I started recording video for each one of the sections. So we're going to end up with 13 videos all total, because we did the introduction and those pieces and the first section all together in one video. It's the longest video. And we've been able to put that out there. Well, what's happening is my folks who need to go through that, they're watching me talk to them and walk them through and why something might be worded such of a way, and giving them those definitions, and they're answering that, and they're emailing back to us the answers, and like that. And some of them have just chosen to, or some organizations that I've given to have chosen to just do it internal, so we're not seeing their answers. But that's another way that when I realized that, I went, wait, we're going to have something here that now we can put on our Thinkific platform, and we can share in video format to other people, and just in general help. And so that was probably the first time that I realized that, wait a second, this is not like the end of everything. This is just a temporary stop. And the reason I say that I have a different take is I don't believe that this is recession. I also don't believe it's depression. Yes, we may have some economic tendencies like that right now, like with a lot of people being out of work and different things like that now, because it was this sudden stop. But I'm starting to see, even in groups that I'm involved in with a lot of entrepreneurs and stuff, people, because business owners are, and small business owners in particular, are doing their analysis, they're starting to figure out how to hire some people that maybe just suddenly lost their job. And I'm starting to see that even in just a couple of weeks. And so I'm very optimistic because I think that we have a time now to innovate and change. But even in our nonprofit operations, we have a time to do that. One of our national nonprofits, I do serve in the front facing role at the request of the boards because it's something that affects me. And so right now, as we've been building them, I serve in that ED role. And, we're having to look at, well, how do we recruit member physicians? And by the way, they're primary care physicians. So they're on the front lines right now. But how do we let them know how we're advocating for them and how we become members, how they can become members and how we can support them? And so we're starting to do things with video and different things like that, and emailing them and just calling them to thank them. And but what I'm noticing is that we're getting a really positive response. And even with my own clients, we're starting to make those types of phone calls and reach out to people. And this is why my take on this is that this is a temporary blip. And if everybody can keep in mind that it's a temporary blip, it's a challenge because we're having to really fastly pivot. But it's an opportunity. And that is really how I'm starting to view it, is that it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the nonprofit sector to learn how to run better and more streamlined, and really review who they're getting funding from, how they're getting funding, how their programs are running. But it's also an opportunity for those of us who have for-profit businesses to take a look at them and say, you know what do we really want to do? And where's the innovation that we have? And what have we kept saying we were going to do, but we just didn't have the time? And that in this pause, we can do that.
I like that. I like that opportunity. It's an opportunity for a lot of people to pivot, to innovate. But at the same time, I think there's businesses that might not be able to make it. And I mean, it could be due to COVID-19, but it could be due to they weren't doing so great in the first time. Maybe they just started and they didn't have like a good plan or savings to operate like on a crisis or with certain scenarios. So what would you tell somebody that's like running in the red, or how do you know when to close your doors? What would be a good advice for you to say, like, hey, if your numbers are not doing this, or if your operations cannot innovate, this is a good time to think about closing? Or like, have you had those discussions with a client, or maybe even in the past with some of the disasters that you have experienced? How do you have those conversations, and what are some of the first steps to assess that?
Those conversations are always hard, and I've had tons of those conversations over the years. Right now, to me, it's a little bit of a different conversation. I've had a lot of those conversations with a lot of the folks that I network with. Most of the companies that we're working with right now, while they're not 100% prepared, I'd like to tell y'all that on my side, I was 100% prepared and thought that, we had enough in reserves and we had enough this. And, when you start looking at the numbers, you go, if this is really sustained for a long time, and we don't do anything, we're going to have issues. And I think just about every company out there, and I don't care what the size of it is right now, really is looking at that, because that's part of being empowered, right? Is kind of just sitting there and admitting that maybe you weren't as prepared as you thought you would be, right? For disaster, for a crisis, for something that none of us can control. And that's true. And we can't. But I'm going to address this maybe a little differently, Daniela, than what you were asking question wise. But here's the thing that I notice, and I want to talk about like the restaurants in particular. You know, some of the hospitality industry, bars, hotels, those types of things. But this kind of applies to everybody. But one of the biggest things that I saw almost immediately, and I've had repeated conversations with folks in some of the group that even follows me on social media and like that, that the very first thing I saw the week after, so say the week of March 16th, was all of these restaurants in particular just go, we're closing our doors. Now, we know that the margins in restaurants are really thin, but what really surprised me was how many of them were not willing, the owners were not willing to step back and think about what can we do. So I'm in a group with one of the gals that I'm in a group with. Her husband owns a restaurant and manages it. And of course, here where we are, when the city said, well, you can't have more than 10 people and his entire workforce is 10 people, they went, well, we got to shut the doors, right? And they had no drive-through. They had never done delivery, none of that. And yet they were also amongst the handful that we have across the city. And that when I was talking with somebody in New York City on Friday, and they were saying, yeah, we've seen the same thing. Some of them just like shuttered immediately, and others went to work and said, well, how can we start doing online orders or, call orders, to go orders, and get them delivered? And how do we figure out how to do this? And then better yet, how do we figure out how to tell the public we're doing this? And so a lot of times the difference between closing or not closing, even if you're running in the red, and I've given this advice over the years, has more to do with our mindset and where we're willing to go than it has to do with anything. Now, sometimes, quite honestly, you do get to the point where there just is no more money coming in. There's nothing you can do. But right now, in what I'm considering the temporary, I'm not actually advising people to shut their doors. I'm advising everybody to take a look at what you've got, what's been working, what maybe could work better, or how can you innovate that. So, for instance, I do a lot of my masterminds in person because I prefer it that way. It's a lot more fun. But we're going to be bringing the mastermind ability online and all virtual. But it's not just a call like this. There's some other considerations that we've had to build out a little bit about the back end so that the folks who are participating, they can access the materials and what's that look like, and they can, so that type of stuff comes on. And then because of my faith and the fact that I think that in this time period, we should be giving back. I'm not saying I'm giving everything away, because I'm not. I need to, income for me and for all of the people that I'm responsible for. But there is a certain amount of stuff that we're going to be opening up to other folks at, no cost for a certain period of time. And I think that there's a lot of companies that can do that. And I think that if you're a company that maybe you've never sold online, but you're a product company, not a service company, like coaching and mentoring and the type of even consulting you would say we do, that's more of a service. based. But if you're product based, you know, use Facebook Marketplace, use Shopify, use any of those and just start getting your stuff up there. Don't worry about whether your pictures are perfect or your videos are perfect. I shot a video the other day for one of the nonprofits, and it was really supposed to be my test video that membership development team can take out to help develop membership. And I was like, hey, here's the test video. Just let me know because the lighting's bad. I'm not speaking real poised. And the whole team and the client came back and went, we don't want you to reshoot it because it's very thin, not thin, but it's very raw and from the heart. So I think sometimes we don't do things and we don't innovate. And so what I've been really recommending to everybody in every small business is work on figuring out, and don't just go, well, this is happening and no money's coming in and I just lost every contract overnight. I mean, a couple of our really big contracts, we will eventually get paid. That's what everybody's thinking from our client to us. But the factors that are causing the non-payment are actually out of all of our control. So, but they're working on innovation and we're supporting them on that. At the same time, I think that sometimes what happens, and it's human nature, when we have such a shock to the system like this, our companies that are really struggling, our tendency is to tell that other business owner that you might know to just say, and when they say, oh, I got to shut the doors, is to agree with them that they should shut the doors, because you might have been thinking that for months, if not years, even if there's a family relative or a close friend or somebody that you've gotten to know pretty good because of the struggles they've shared with you. But I think that we need to actually do the opposite and encourage everybody to keep going, because some of those companies that are in red today, right now on Monday, April 13th, quite honestly, could be well in the black on July 13th, just because they just start sitting down and take one step a day. And all I'm advising my clients and anybody else that I've had discussions with on this is one step a day. It's nothing major. Just go, this is the one thing I'm going to focus on, and we're going to do that, and do it in something that you do really well, because the truth is the world actually needs us to keep going and to not only keep the folks that we have employed, or if you're not employing somebody, be able to employ somebody, but also, increase that. And that is really important. And this whole event proves this is not just a local event or a state event or our country event. This is really a global event, and everybody who's been called to have small business entrepreneurship needs to keep going. And so the only time that I really would advise a business to just go ahead and close is if they were basically bankrupt at the time. But even if you end up doing that, I don't want you to beat yourself up. And I advise this all the time. Don't beat yourself up. Don't call yourself a failure. Just go, okay, how can I start that company again? Because I'll tell you, in the 19 years of my journey of doing this, I have had to reinvent and start this company again on a couple of occasions. And that's important.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how you say, like, everyone's going through a shock. So it's very easy to close down as a, like, internally, like mentally, also close down your business. Feel like that's the only avenue you have to take, because also it's like a lot of businesses, that's what they're doing. So you kind of take it on and be like, well, should I be doing the same? So for that, and I want to, like, ask if Veronica, if you have a question, you can jump in and ask them. Yeah, I know, like, you can type it in the chat or ask it away. I don't want to take all the questions. But I wanted to ask, where do you find support? And it could be like personally, mentally, but also like in the community. What do you do for support? Where do you go to find your answers? Where you seen something new and you're like, okay, what do I do with this? Like, what are avenues that people can find for support? And personally, what do you do for support and keep sane and keep going?
Well, one of the avenues of support obviously can be Launch SA, and um, because we're all virtual right now, for instance, is using the social media platforms. So whatever groups that you're in, but make sure this is a time though to review your groups too, okay? Because you're looking for groups that are very um, uh, focus towards what you need to focus on. So it's a good time to go clean out your groups on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Twitter doesn't really have groups, so Instagram doesn't really either. But really from that, and but the other thing about support is actually picking up the phone and calling people. Calling your, I know this might seem weird, but calling your clients and just talking to them. Calling, if you're a nonprofit, calling the very folks that you provide services to and just talking to them. You'd be surprised at how much support you get from that and how much support they get from the fact that you did that. The other thing is to, especially in the business realm, whether you're running a nonprofit or you're running a for-profit, doesn't matter. If you're running a business, you need to surround yourself right now with folks who are in business at all levels, who are working and are working towards the mindset that we have just been discussing. So for me, that personally takes on a couple of different things. I am part of the John Maxwell group, so there are the John Maxwell team. So within the John Maxwell team, we have various phone calls every day of the week. And so if I need to ask a question about my business or I'm trying to think through something, I can get on one of those calls, depending on what the subject matter is of the call, and talk with that. But I'm also part of the 10X movement on Grant Cardone's side. And so I'm in a group of folks that are really, really, really trying to work and help keep that mindset up. But at the same time, for instance, I'll get on calls with my clients, and even folks who aren't my clients but want to get on my schedule. I'll just send them the link right now, whether or not they're my target area, audience, my avatar, and I'll just talk to them, because that is a type of support. But email messages and just reaching out, even using your social media platforms to reach out. So on Facebook, most people don't realize it, but you can do it on Instagram, and you can actually do it on LinkedIn, which is just a short little video or a voice message to somebody, as opposed to typing out a chat to somebody. So for me, I have a lot of support at home, though. Sometimes as entrepreneurs, we don't necessarily have the same support at home. And it's not that our family doesn't support us. Okay. My husband, for instance, it's taken him about 18 years to become an entrepreneur. We're actually in the process of forming his company right now. And he will tell you that it wasn't that he didn't ever support me. He did. But a lot of times it's because our family doesn't actually understand the decisions and stuff that we have to make. Our close friends don't understand that. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting to have conversations around that hopefully other people can pick up and share with their family and friends to help them understand what you're going through. And so the natural tendency on that is, especially if you haven't been in business for a long time, is for your family and friends to say to you, oh yeah, that's great, don't you think it's time to go get a real job right now, especially in this environment? And I know we've all heard that. So I'm making sure that I have about 5 people who are really close to me that understand me enough that will tell me the truth. And sorry, my throat's getting clogged. Sorry about that. And I'm able to reach out to them and really talk through issues and problems, or quite honestly, even how I'm feeling right now. And it's really important right now that the world sees how we're feeling too, because that helps support everybody too.
Yeah, I feel the main purpose of one of the purposes that we started the Fresh Perspectives is because of that, to feel like you're not alone, right? Like there's other entrepreneurs going through the same thing. Maybe what are they thinking, or what measures are they taking to pull through and keep going? And we started it, I think it's been 3 weeks with this. So every entrepreneur, every small business owner has a different perspective to share. And I think it's great to have those perspectives out there. That way you can resonate to whomever makes the most sense, or even if you can take pieces from each other, right? So
Right.
I really do want to like go back to the like call people, reach out. I want to tell whoever is going to listen to this that Jocelyn, along with other mentors, reached out to us initially to say like, hey, I want to help. So that's, people are out there wanting to help. Not everyone wants you to stay in business and wants you to thrive just because we need that, like you mentioned before. So I don't know if you have anything like to share as a general entrepreneur, general perspective on why it's
I
important.
have
Oh
I have
yeah,
a
go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
If maybe you can, provide some guidance here. So I own a CBD business, so I'm a little bit more in a tougher situation. I cannot actively go onto Facebook
Right.
and promote CBD business. You can't buy ads from them. It's very different. So I'm
Right.
very limited other than posting pictures. Like I can't make medical claims and say, hey, if you have depression, this can help you, or right now your anxiety's high. I can't even say things like that. So it's I feel like I'm caught in a tough place right now. How would you, I guess I'm trying to say, like, what do you advise, like how to reach out? And I also have 5 stars. It's like I can send out text messaging to all my customers and things like
Okay.
that, promos and things like that. But that too is, kind of limited. You don't want to stalk people and send out 20 messages a week. So I guess do you have any other advice how to like?
Well, so a couple of things, Veronica. I'm gonna pull a couple of things, and it's a great question too, because you're absolutely right. The industry that you're in, it's really tough, right? I mean, it's tough even in the best of times because the laws haven't quite caught up with what society thinks around it. So,
Right.
um, so having said that, so there's a couple of things here I'm going to give you, I mean, and for anybody else who's listening, because in a lot of respects we should all be doing this right now as well. I consider that, and my belief is that when we're called to be entrepreneurs and business owners, we're also called to lead. And by that, what I mean is sometimes we have to show by example, but a lot of times we're not, because we get so caught in the hype of what everybody tells us to do for sales or not do for sales, or buying ads or not buying ads. And so now we're in a situation where like you can't completely do that. The text messaging, I don't know, and if you if you ask the Grant Cardone side of stuff, they would tell you you can't ever have too much contact. I mean, I think I get like 20 text messages from them a day, 20 emails from them a day. They call me repeatedly. So can it be overkill? Yes, that part can be. But here's the bigger thing I think that you should do if you're not already doing it. Go out using your social media channels and start doing some live, just start doing some lives. I mean, literally lives, and start just sharing about you and your story, why you got into this business, why this is important to you, why, and don't sell. So for instance, Daniela and Ryan and everybody at Launch SA knows this about me. I have raised millions of dollars. And the truth is, I've never sold once. Now, by that, what I mean is I've always used story and relationship building. So a lot of your folks, some of this is going to be, if you've got phone numbers for those clients, call them or send them a text message or send them several text messages and say, hey, look, I would really like to schedule a call with you to check on you and see how you're doing. Okay, it's going to do two things. One is it's going to position you as somebody who cares and cares about what they're going through, but it's also going to make them remember you. And that's the bigger thing. So even in this little blip here where there might be a slowdown on sales, you might actually find out that you're making more sales. I made a sale last week on something that I didn't think we would sell on, that people would really be thinking about in this. And yet we're finding that a whole bunch of people are thinking about that. So, but one of the biggest problems that most of us as businesses suffer from, and I haven't quite done enough of it either, which is we're in what you call obscurity. A lot of people don't know about us. And so because of that, like for you, if I'm changing your strategy right now, I'm going to say, start doing lives, post, whatever you're kind of normally posting, but you want to see people so that people see you and they start feeling like they have a relationship for you. And I'm going to give you a really good example. There is a gentleman over in the UK that over the last couple of weeks, it wasn't my personal page because you can only get onto my friends list if you happen to be friends with somebody else who's already in my list, right? To even ping me that you want to be a friend on the Facebook side. But he saw something that I did on my public figure page or my business page. He couldn't remember, but I just kind of went, I've done a couple really rough lives just kind of explaining about me and about moving the business owner or having to bring the business home and how that was affecting me. And he literally reached out to me and said, can I talk to you? And when we had a Zoom conversation and he said to me, he goes, look, I edit books and I'm a published author and I need some help with exposure. And I said, okay, well, because like, that's not, I don't do marketing and like that's not what we're about. And I said to him, well, why are you coming to me? Because I was curious. And he said, well, I saw one of your videos. And I was like, oh, okay. So we talked through, though, what he was having. So I kept asking him more questions. And by the time we got off that call, I had helped him come up with a path that he was going to start instituting. Well, it's only been 2 weeks. He just emailed me this morning with a link to his new website. Well, rather, he Facebook Messengered me. And but in just 2 weeks, he signed 4 more clients. He's pricing out bigger. And so like for your business, yeah, you're going to have to ship things to people. But I think that if you use the same type of strategy of really just phone calls, emails, text messages, doing live so people see Veronica as a person. That is what connects with people. That is what makes our sales. People don't buy, contrary to the popular belief, on price, and they don't buy on the best deal. What they do buy is on emotion and whether or not they think that they can trust you. In this new environment we're in, it's really about, do they think that they can trust us? Does that help?
Yes, yes, very much so.
And
Okay.
I am nervous about the live stuff.
I
Like
have
when
a
we're back in the store, to do it in my backyard. I'm not good with social media, but I'll definitely do it. Give it a
And
try.
Veronica, are these clients that you're texting or like your database, are these people
Uh-huh.
who have already purchased from you or?
Oh yes, yes. And we have a lot of like repeat customers who I even had a customer last week because I had to go deliver something to them, tell me, "You're the only one we trust. I'm glad you can do this." Like, so
Well,
I
I
know
think,
there's
yeah, I think that's important that you already know they're interested. It might be that they're not thinking of purchasing your product right now, but I think you need to remind them of
Mm-hmm.
like why they need it or for you, or when they're gonna go back to buying it, it's you that they're gonna
Mhm.
buy it from, right? Not someone
Right.
else.
Well,
Yes, that's true.
yeah, and Veronica, if you want to reach out to me offline, that's fine. I could probably show you a couple more things that on this call I can't show you, but using my screen that
Uh-huh.
you can utilize and use. And
Okay.
even to get yourself, because honestly, and I've shared this with Daniela and Ryan, I love like radio and podcasts. I feel like in this environment, like we're doing right now, I can be me. Or if I could see people in this environment, I feel like I could be me. But when I go live or I record a video, or I've been on TV because of the job I used to have, um, I feel like I get very stiff, and I just can't. But there's some tricks around that.
Okay.
So I'll be happy to share those with you
Yes,
offline, or
please.
anybody else who likes this, just reach out to me. I mean, they can send you my email address, or you
Yeah,
can
I can
ping
I
me
can
through
post
one of
it.
the social media channels I've
Yeah, I
got.
can post it right now in the chat. I can drop it in
Yeah,
and add it to the video.
yeah.
And yeah, but I mean, you should. I mean, there's other ways you can engage. You can do video. You can like make sure if they're reaching out to you for mental health, like how can you also share tips through social media? Like how can
Mhm.
they like grow that awareness around like what you do, why it's important.
Right,
Share some tips of like, hey, well. Like you're at home and maybe you're taking my product, and also you can do all these other things to relax and keep that flow going, or other stuff that you can do. And I think you can even look at your competition, like other people, big companies, what are they doing, and emulate some of that, because sometimes
yeah.
imitation or look at what they're doing wrong and do your own thing.
Right. And the other side that you can do, Veronica, is and Danielle, you're exactly right, which is position yourself as the expert in this field. So in other words, like some of the things that people might not know, that's not it becomes a sales thing. If you want to look at it, it becomes a lead generation type thing. But just talking about things that people might not know, and um, from an education standpoint. So you're not trying to say, hey, I'm a mental health counselor, or I'm, you know, this expert or that expert, but just sharing information out. That too will increase, and and you never know. You might find that you've got a little bit of a course or something you can put out there, just kind of talking about it, that people can access and learn more. So then they learn why they want to buy from Veronica. But I think the other side to all of this right now, for anybody who's really listening, is hard sales are 99% of the time, in my opinion, not going to work in this type of environment. it's giving people an opportunity to think through things, because the reason is most people's minds are still somewhat in panic and fear mode. So they're more likely to say no faster, but if you can give them things to read or learn about you or learn about the product or whatever, so they remember about you and your store and all of that, then they're more likely to buy. So
Yes, and then there's like a also balance. I don't know if you're on Instagram or what do you use to promote, or Facebook, but there's a balance on posts. Like, don't be sending out always like I'm selling you this, I'm selling you that, or discounts. Like, talk to them about other stuff. That way, like, they're more like, oh, okay, oh, look, they're doing that, or sharing a post with their friends, or learning more about your product. Like, how do you make it? If you can get customer like testimonials, and like, hey, it's okay, is it okay if I use your review to post it on my page, or even ask them for a review? I think all that constructs like a whole view of what you have to offer. It is not just like, hey, it's, I don't know, $10, buy it from me, it's $10 today, it's going to be $5. Like, you have to tell them more around what you're doing, how you're doing it. So if you're shy about like going, like putting your face out there, I would suggest like you break that wall, but also like use your customers, use other type of interaction to engage with your client, and be like, hey, like it worked for someone else, or like, I don't know, like you need to understand your customer profile, and maybe like touch to that, like, okay, if my customer is moms, then like target moms and put a testimonial about moms, or I don't know if I'm like, this goes to
Yes,
everyone.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think we're on time, so I'm going to stop the recording and say thank you, Jocelyn, for your time. This was great. I know you're always open to as a mentor for nonprofits and other small business owners. So if anybody wants to reach out to Jocelyn, we'll be posting her information. She's one of our temps mentors at Launch SA. So we're really happy to have her. So I'm going to stop the recording, not to say you guys can like keep talking.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think, Jocelyn, if you don't mind, my husband was kind of listening too, and he just had a question.
Oh, sure. I don't mind at all.
Eric, what's the question? Hang on.